What is your opinion of restaurants that ban children? I usually don't mind kids at restaurants, but I think there should be more that are child-free. Most of the time they're okay, but it's really annoying when you're trying to have a nice dinner and conversation and some kids are running around, screaming, and the parents just sit there and ignore them. I'll ignore it for a while, because sometimes kids just act a fool. But if it gets to the point it becomes ridiculous, or if they start to play around my table, invade my space, I'm going to ask for a different table without caring whether the parents overhear me say it's because of their poorly behaved kids. All for it. There's this weird idea that just because some people have children and certain things aren't appropriate for children, that those things shouldn't be allowed and everything should be child-friendly, but that's bollocks. I think parents need to learn they can't take little Jimmy everywhere, and certain places, events, etc. are not suitable for them, and that's okay. And if they make the decision to have children, then they're also making the decision to not go certain places, etc. I own a fair-sized, relatively successful restaurant, and I am a parent, and I have a very strict no children under 2 policy. I understand fully how hard it is to get any time for yourself when you have a new child. I do, fully. You don't bring your crying baby into my restaurant. If your child is under 2, you get a fucking babysitter or you don't come here. I don't care how long it's been since you've been out, and I don't care what you think gives you the right to force an entire room of people into listening to that god-awful squalling. What's going to happen is that I will politely instruct you to leave, and I don't give a fuck if you never come back. I'd prefer to lose your patronage than the patronage of everyone else in the room with you. It's always harsh to learn that the world does not revolve around you, I know, but the sad fact of the matter is that the people in my restaurant have come to relax, enjoy the food, the ambience, the game, what the fuck ever, and not to listen to your sweet, perfect little angel shriek like a banshee. The name hanging on the placard outside my door does not read Chucky fucking Cheeses, and my name isn't Ronald fucking McDonald. You keep that shit at home, you selfish pricks. Here's the issue. Kids yell, scream, and misbehave. Restaurants make their money by eliciting patrons and getting them to stay and spend money. Somebody who has had a stressful day at work may want to have a couple glasses of wine with their steak. They're not gonna do that if there's a kid throwing a tantrum a few tables over. Also, it's not necessarily your kids, it's kids in general. Just because your spawn is well behaved doesn't mean everybody else's is. It's not a personal attack against you or your family. It's an establishment trying to maintain a particular atmosphere that's conducive to their clientele. Finally, a lot of people are stupid and bring their kids to clearly inappropriate places to eat. My hometown has a very nice Belgian taproom. They serve higher-end meals along with cheese platters and so forth to complement an absolutely stunning offering of European beers. Yet I've seen people bring kids underage and toddlers who would proceed to misbehave, or infants who would just cry. It's not a family restaurant, and they enacted a similar policy. There is a time and place for having kids out to eat. No one is going to deny that. It's not at 10 p.m. when I'm trying to enjoy a rare Belgian Abbey beer alongside a plate of carbonades flamandes. 100% for them. For Valentine's Day this year, my partner and I went to a posh, romantic restaurant. This is something we only do once a year as it coincides with our anniversary. At the table adjacent was a toddler in a high chair who would constantly squeal and throw their food everywhere. I get that the parents were just trying to enjoy their meal out, but hire a babysitter FFS. All for it. I'm not allowed to yell and scream in a restaurant. So why should anybody else be allowed to? I don't think it should be ban children outright. That's not fair to the families who have kids with good behavior. But I definitely think that if your kid starts losing it, they should ask you to get control of it or leave. It's only right, and yeah, it's just a sign of respect. Nobody wants to hear that shit. So if you can't keep your kids under control, don't go out, and if you really want that food, get it to go. I would be a loyal patron forever. However, I have only ever seen one actually do this, and it was years ago when I was on vacation in Hawaii. Additionally, if the main business is alcohol, then no one under 21 should be allowed in the door, in the US that is. My GF and I went to a brewery that also serves food the other day, and it was full of families with many children of all ages. FFS. We didn't go to a brewery to watch children run amok. My mom and I went to an inexpensive but sorta upscale, classy restaurant last weekend, and they had that type of seating where the whole wall is booths but the other side of the tables have chairs. They were all full except one right next to a toddler that was yelling and screaming so loud we could hear it outside. They tried to seat us there, and as soon as we got to the table I looked between the kid, its mom and the hostess, and very loudly said, "I'm sorry, but can we sit somewhere else where there's not a child screaming the whole time we're eating?" We ended up being forced to sit on the patio in Scottsdale in July, all because some stupid lady couldn't make her kid food at home or take it to McDonald's or just teach it to stfu in public places. It would be nice to have. It would have been even nicer the night my friend and I went to IOP to be sat right in front of a family with 3 screaming kids while the guy consistently went outside throughout the entire meal to take phone calls, leaving the mom with all those kids. I couldn't hear my friend talk. Worst time ever, and I will demand to not be sat near kids if they are even remotely loud. Terrible time. I love this. I'm still a teen, but I really hate when other people's kids are just running around and climbing into random booths. My older brother and I have always been well behaved, and we've never had the issue of disrupting other people, so when I've seen other people's noisy, unruly children I've always been like, how does this happen? Problem isn't the child, it's the parents. I had to personally chase my nephew around a restaurant on 3-4 different occasions this past weekend because he, a 1-year-old, just left the table and took off, and his parents were just watching him, beckoning him to return. He ignored them and just kept going. Did this annoy other patrons? I'm sure it did. It's not the kid's fault though, the parents should be banned. As a parent I'm okay with it. You've got family restaurants, casual restaurants, smart restaurants that ban people in trainers, fast food restaurants, fine dining restaurants, seafood restaurants, steak restaurants, nose-to-tail restaurants, vegetarian and vegan restaurants, home cooking style restaurant, hip and trendy restaurants, any number of restaurants that cater to a single cuisine. Different people want, and like, different things, so if a restaurant wants to be adult only, then I don't really care. They're good places to go if you don't need to be able to take children with you. They're bad places to go if you need to take children with you. The kind of parents who complain about it are, ironically, the same parents who make it necessary, entitled assholes who think the whole world should be arranged for the convenience of their brat who has never learned how to behave decently in public. It should be okay for restaurants to ban children. Every time a restaurant even tentatively proposes banning kids, there's an immediate uproar from mommy bloggers and parents in general. I think restaurants have every right to ban kids without getting boycotted, and honestly I wish more places would have restrictions on them. Children are loud, messy and disruptive. People spending money to go out deserve to have a meal they know won't be interrupted by a screaming baby or kids running around and getting underfoot. Parents should be able to hire a sitter and not have date night feel like everything they're trying to get a break from. People with autism, sensory disorders, Anxiety can be easily triggered by crying and screaming. I get that dealing with kids is just part of living in society, but there are tons of family-friendly restaurants and always will be. It shouldn't be a huge issue if a restaurant owner chooses to ban kids below a certain age, or have hours, days that are older kids, adults only. It doesn't mean they hate kids or families. It just means that it isn't the right environment for children, and that's okay. The entitlement mentality with some parents is ridiculous. I actually like most kids, but it should be totally fine to not allow them in certain spaces without it being a huge moral debate. Sometimes you think they're going to be good and they are. Sometimes they're not and there's nothing you can do about it, says poster woman for bad parenting. When my sisters and I were growing up, if we got loud in a restaurant, one of our parents took us out. It was inconvenient for them, but they only had to do it once or twice. It's called responsible parenting. As long as today's parents think children can raise themselves, yeah, keep them home until they're 21. I support them. I saw an article of people losing their S because one restaurant owner decided to ban kids under 16. He had his reasons. He wanted his restaurant to have a relaxed and intimate atmosphere. Restaurants are hard work. People who open their own usually have a huge passion for it and want their restaurant to reflect their culinary desires. Also, he recalled multiple experiences of waitstaff dropping dishes due to kids running around, so I think that's fine that he decided to ban kids. It annoyed me that so many people kicked up his stink. Like others have said, there's plenty of restaurants that allow kids, so why not have ones that are just for adults? The owner Evan made a good point. He suggested to parents that if their kids cannot sit down and eat a meal at home without having to get out of their seats or shout and make a lot of noise or mess, then they shouldn't take them out to restaurants, not until they learn. I've never been to a restaurant that bans children, but my sister's wedding reception did, and it was glorious. Some family members refused to show up if their little ones couldn't. More cake for us. The biggest reason my sister decided on that was because the previous wedding we went to there were kids in the family running around wild and nearly knocked the cake off the table. My sister said the next wedding they'll succeed in knocking it off, and that's my wedding. Only heard of this just now, and my immediate opinion: I love the idea, provided children-friendly restaurants continue to exist. Children can be loud and obnoxious, and often are picky eaters. It makes complete sense for certain restaurants to just ban kids completely if they're going to get some nuggies from the kiddie menu anyway. I'm talking nicer restaurants with the menu targeting adults. It shouldn't be too hard for parents to find a babysitter or playdate when they fancy treating themselves to a meal. Obviously, it's inconvenient for parents, but hey, kids grow up, and having kids was their choice, or mistake. Doctor, I don't think it's unreasonable and like the idea. Last place I went that had a no children policy was a fancy 5-star restaurant. You called and made reservations for a year in advance to eat. A child would ruin the atmosphere for what to many is an escape from their children for a romantic night alone. A child wouldn't enjoy it either. A quiet place where people talk in hushed whispers, and the loudest thing outside of the band is the clink of glasses. They'd get bored quickly. We've all been children forced to go to boring fancy dinners or meals before. It's just not fun when you're that age. Why put them through it? Let them alone for a night or two with trusted family or a sitter if you can afford it. Go enjoy your evening and come back at the end of it wanting to see your child, because you naturally would miss the little hellion after a few hours. Just don't force them on other people who need that escape just as badly. To each their own. I can certainly understand why restaurants would do that. I have felt that way before I had kids, and even more so now that I have kids of my own. I have a toddler that in no way, shape or form would be good in a restaurant setting, so we just don't take her, and will not take her until we can get to a point where she won't just start randomly throwing her food It's getting better, but it's an ongoing process. Other people aren't so considerate. If I want to go to a restaurant that has a firm no kids policy, that just means I don't try and take my kids there, or I order takeout from them and eat it at home with the family. I'm a parent to 2 toddlers and 1 preteen, and I'm not confident at all in taking the toddlers in a sit-down restaurant because I know they'll last all but 5 minutes. Then the whining, crying, throwing shit on the ground, wanting to run around will begin, and it's hella disruptive to the other people trying to enjoy a meal, not to mention stressful and embarrassing for the parents of the children. I don't see a problem with having adults-only restaurants. Actually, a few years ago my husband and I went on vacation to a 21+ only resort, and it was amazing not having to hear wild children running around being loud and disruptive. Kids can't appreciate the meal, they get bored sitting down and want to play. That's okay unless they get on my nerve while I actually try to enjoy my meal. I think most restaurants shouldn't allow kids. Then again, if people actually raise their kids right, it wouldn't be a problem, as the presence of kid isn't bad on its own. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I remember numerous occasions when waitstaff would say things like, "Wow, your children are so well behaved," because we weren't throwing fits. The thing is, we were self-policing. If one kid threw a fit, then everyone had to leave, and we knew it, so I think each sibling acted up once or twice in public. And then the rest of us made said sibling's life a living hell, so it wasn't repeated. Given that I work in service, I would love to work at one. Kids are the worst part about working at restaurants. They run around screaming, and if you bump into them while busting your ass, somehow it's your fault and your tip also goes out the window. And when they get up to leave, you have to clean a table covered in kid. I have no idea what it is, but it's sticky, gets on everything, and is only there when a kid was just eating. I wish there were more of them, honestly. Restaurants are expensive, and too many times I've had an otherwise nice experience ruined because of a shitty parent not controlling their child's behavior in public. Those same shitty parents are usually the ones who also berate the staff of the restaurant because they don't have a kids menu. There are plenty of businesses that don't cater to children, and I see no issue with that at all. If you have kids and want to go to such an establishment, get a sitter. It's likely cheaper than paying for your kids' dinner at a fancy restaurant without a kids menu. Can't find a sitter? Go somewhere else. So many restaurants out there are designed for families and encourage kids. It's not like you don't have options. Mother was a waitress, and this would have been the dream for her. I think I remember her telling me one time there was an incident where the kid basically beelined into someone's legs, spilling a massive tray of waters onto some people. Thankfully nothing hot to burn anyone, and the kid didn't get any glass coming down on them. But of course the parents didn't really seem to care that their little brat was running around like that. Strongly agree. During all my uni life I've worked in several type of restaurants, from silver service ones to right out fast foods. Some restaurants are simply put not child-friendly, as often children can be a problem for the costumers. They can ruin your experience, and for the staff, especially when they're poorly managed by their parents. Additionally, it's not an absolute, but it does happen. Some parents tend to second the poor behavior of their kids. I had a case of kids jumping around the seats in the waiting area of the restaurant, shouting, while the restaurant was quite busy. When I asked politely to the parents if they could recall their kids, their answer was, "But this is an Italian restaurant, you should tolerate those things." No, Karen, we shouldn't. As a father, I'm okay with it. We don't really go out to eat much anyway. I've read about parents that treat the waitstaff as impromptu babysitters. Some mom groups on Facebook even had the nerve to put out a guide to waiters on how to keep their little ones happy. Hello, it's your damn job. Waiters get paid to bring you food and extra napkins. If you want a babysitter, R1. I respect parents who have the guts to tell the kids that if they don't call down they'll go home and then go through with it.